I said good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Ndidi Okonkwo Nwuneli, and I'm a visiting scholar at the Maxwell School. We're delighted to have you today, and it's going to be a very interesting session with a distinguished entrepreneur, business leader, very, very experienced board chairman, author, speaker, who has a heart for young people and a divine purpose around interventions to spur entrepreneurship. His wealth of experience started in India, but now I would say he's really a global change agent and a global rock star in my book. And it's such an honor and privilege to have Ravi Venkatesan on this workshop. Ravi is actually doing in from New York. I'm doing in from Lagos. And I do apologize for the audio issues, but we will get started right away. We're going to have a very Ravi has put together a fantastic presentation, which he'll give for about 25 minutes, and then we'll open up to question and answer. So once again, thank you, Ravi, for doing this. Thank you to all of you who have joined us. And we're going to have live captioning, closed captioning. So if you do have any hearing impairments, please do utilize this service. I'm going to pass it over to Catherine now to share Ravi's very impressive bio. She's not going to read everything because his bio, he has lived 10 lives and built such a wealth of experiences in many, many sectors, including technology, social entrepreneurship, engineering, but I'll let Catherine do the honors. Over to you, Catherine.
All right, so you've already said most of what I have here, Ndidi. Ravi has a BTech from IIT Bombay, an MS from Purdue University, and an MBA from the Harvard Business School. And he's a business leader, author, social entrepreneur from India. He spent 3 decades leading multiple organizations in the private sector, the public sector, and the social sector across 3 continents and multiple industries. And I will post a link to his bio if you'd like to learn more about him. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. Does it mean it's now mine?
Yes, all yours.
Oh, let me see if I can. Oh, great. All right. Well, thank you for inviting me here, Ndidi, and thank you for that nice introduction to both of you. I'm going to, as Ndidi said, talk for maybe 20, 25 minutes. And introduce this idea of mass entrepreneurship, which is based on the work that an organization I founded is doing in India, which we hope eventually to take global. The idea is to pretty much just put up a few concepts out there and then invite a discussion. Usually if there's any value for you, it comes less from my talking and much more from the engagement subsequently. So I do hope you'll have lots of questions and challenging observations and so forth. Hold on. Okay, so look, this work has its origins in India's unemployment crisis. As many of you might know or suspect, like much of the world, India has a giant problem with unemployment. And partly it's driven by demographics and partly it's driven by the structure of the economy. But in a nutshell, about 1 million young people turn 18 every month and start looking for productive work, gainful employment. We also have a fairly large number of people, young and middle-aged, who wish to get off farms into more remunerative work, more productive work, typically in cities. So very broadly speaking, India needs to create about 18 million net new jobs every year. And the idea of net new is also important because jobs are also being destroyed by technology, productivity gains, etc. So this has to offset that. Now, for more than a decade, our track record at creating new jobs has been well short of this number. It's a fraction of that number. The jobs data in India is fairly noisy or murky. And so I don't know exactly what that number is, but it is probably of the order of 5 or 6 million would be my guess. And so what we have, even pre-COVID, is some really staggering unemployment rates. The official figure is about 8 to 9%. But what is more disturbing is what is called the workforce participation rate, which in India is 42%. In a healthy economy, an economy that's functioning well, it should be 65, 70, 75%. And what that means is the numerator is people who are in employment or looking for employment. And it means 6 out of 10 Indians aren't even bothering to show up anymore. And of course, there's a huge gender issue because the female workforce participation rate is amongst the lowest in the world. Certainly, it's the lowest for any major country at 21%. Then you also have not just numbers, but also the quality of employment, quality of jobs. A lot of the new jobs being created are, in the nature of gig work, delivering parcels for Amazon or food delivery or these kinds of things. And as a result, the wages are pretty low and there's no mobility. They're not very aspirational, but of course they're still pretty essential. Now, the way out, there isn't one silver bullet, but there are 2 or 3 important levers for India to be able to pull. One of them is, increase manufacturing as a percentage of GDP. We have a nice opportunity now with the realignment of supply chains. I think COVID and also the Cold War has made people a little worried about an excessive dependence on China. And so India, like Vietnam, like Bangladesh, has a nice opportunity to gain share in global manufacturing. And of course, our domestic market is huge. And so there's a pretty giant opportunity for us to make more of what we ourselves consume. And the government's pretty focused on it. And there's a lot of industrial policy and incentives aimed at accelerating this. So that's one. Obviously, another big source of jobs is construction and infrastructure. We need to spend at least $1 trillion in the next few years to modernize. And so if we can accelerate our rate of construction, and there are lots of issues there, that's a pretty nice job creation opportunity. And the third big one is entrepreneurship, which is how do we convert many of our job seekers into job creators? Now, India already has a bit of a start when it comes to entrepreneurship. For a number of years now, we are seeing, tech startups doing really, really well. India is now just after the US and China in terms of the size of our entrepreneurial ecosystem, particularly our tech startups. The problem is that it is very concentrated. It's a very elite activity. It's largely in our big cities, but it's nevertheless doing amazingly well. We've seen exponential growth in venture capital coming in. Although, there's a bit of a slowdown, as you all know well, we created 100 unicorns over the last 2.5 years. Remains to be seen how many will still be unicorns over the next year or so. The problem here with this happy story is, it's concentrated. It's very much a large city phenomenon. But it also, the bigger problem is these startups don't create many jobs. And I've tried to show a little bit of the job data out there. But if you look at all the unicorns put together, they haven't created many good jobs. They've created lots of gig workers, but not many good jobs. And so the question is, how do we extend this entrepreneurial phenomenon across the length and breadth of our large, diverse country, right? And that's the idea of mass entrepreneurship. How do you make this much more broad-based, inclusive? How do you get millions on millions of people, particularly young people of no great pedigree, no great skills, building every kind of business, both sublime and mundane, So it could be the beauty salon, the restaurant, the food business, the motorcycle repair shop, the solar installation and maintenance business, all these kinds of business. There's abundance of opportunities. So India is not, like many countries, is not short of opportunity. What we lack is the ecosystem and the mindset and skills to help people go after it. And that's what we're trying to do. So about 3 years ago, I started this not-for-profit called the Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship. Now, global is our aspiration. Today, our work is very largely in India, although we're beginning to think about extending it to other countries. But our mission is very simple. It is to create the enabling conditions for such broad-based entrepreneurship. And over the decade, we want to see at least 10 million new enterprises that are capable of growth, that grow fast and create 50 to 100 million new jobs. And we are funded, but as you can see, we're largely funded by global donors rather than Indian companies barring Tata Trusts. So that's something, of course, we hope will change over time. Now, we started our work in 2019, and of course, it's 3 years, but 2 years was pretty hard hit by COVID. But about a year in, we began to learn quite a lot. And one of the things I learned is this phenomenon that we call India's missing middle, which is when you look at the all the firms in India, all the companies that are in India, small and large, there are about 63 million of them. Most of them are tiny and stunted. And not only do they not employ many people, they're also incapable of growing. So if you come back in 5 years and take a look again, the numbers really don't move that much. So 95% employ less than 5 people, 98 less than 10 people. And if you look at the number of large firms, they're quite modest, and it's in stark contrast to an equally large country, which is China. And so we have a $2.5 trillion economy, which is perched precariously on a fairly narrow base. The other thing that took us a while, you all probably already know this, but it took us a while to recognize that jobs are not created in any economy by large companies. Yeah, they're very productive, and their growth, their revenue and profit growth happens in a fairly efficient manner. And so it results in jobless growth. The real growth in an economy, the job creation happens when tiny companies grow to become small companies, and small companies grow to become big. And in India, that growth has not been happening for quite a long time. And we call that the broken escalator. So much of our work has been trying to understand what will it take to create the enabling conditions for growth to happen. And so I use this metaphor of something organic, like farming or a forest. And if you want a good crop, what you need is good seed, good soil, and favorable climatic conditions. And so it's much the same for entrepreneurship and economic activity. You need favorable local ecosystems where the seed is essentially your human capital. People with skills, education, literacy, but also aspirations and an entrepreneurial mindset. The soil is largely, as I've written on the slide, about infrastructure, digital connectivity, energy access, roads, linkages to markets, linkages to capital, all that sort of stuff. And then climate is very largely two things, which is what do people aspire to? Who are the role models in this place? And what would societal success look like out here? And the other one is ease of doing business. And so if you come to the city where I live, which is in the south of India called Bangalore, it's the sort of the tech capital of India. The heroes are not politicians or government servants and bureaucrats or people like that. The heroes that everybody wants to emulate are successful entrepreneurs. And that's very unique or relatively uncommon in India and many parts of the world. And so these conditions we found are extraordinarily important. And ease of doing in business is, again, many of you come from developing countries. Big challenge. And I'm going to spend a slide on that, so I won't say much more. So we said, based on our understanding of all this, look, there are 6 problems that we need to apply ourselves to. No, don't ask me why we picked these 6. We could have picked 5 or another 2. But for whatever reason, we said these 6 things are what we are going to apply ourselves to. It's about making entrepreneurship aspirational, getting every young person in school and college exposed to entrepreneurship and coming out with the mindset and skills. Third one is see if we can figure out how to radically make it easy to start and operate a business. And then access to finance is another big issue. And then we have a particular challenge in our country, not unique by any means, where the conditions or headwinds are even greater for women entrepreneurs. So it turns out that only 16% of all businesses are women-owned. If you exclude self-employment, that number comes down to 4 or 5%. So that's obviously a big issue. So we said, let's try and understand these things. Now, the way we do our work is kind of important. The most important word in our game is the A, and A means alliance. So we recognize, look, these are big issues. Each one of these problems is complex and deeply systemic, often the interaction of multiple systems. So as a small organization, our ability to make a big difference is quite small if we pretend that we're going to do the work directly. So we said, look, the best hope we have to make a difference is to create a coalition of like-minded people who care about the same mission, care about the same issues. And so right from day 0, we said we're going to remain a small organization. We're only about 15, 20 people, closer to 15. And we work with and through other organizations, other stakeholders who we call partners. And the way we see ourselves operating is this construct of a backbone organization, where we bring together a set of actors around each of those issues on the previous slide. And what we do is try and amplify their work in a variety of ways, by mobilizing funding, by convening or amplifying the work of some of these people, helping scale what already works, models that work, influencing policy, and so on. So this is an important idea, and I see more and more problems of the world needing this sort of an approach. Okay, I'm just going to quickly tee up about 3 or 4 examples of our work, again, just to give you a sense, and then we'll get into. So this is our work on getting young people exposed to entrepreneurship and hooked on entrepreneurship and having the mindset and some of the skills that are required. Look, we recognize that not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur or is even necessarily suited to become an entrepreneur. But we have a very firm conviction, I have a very firm conviction that to succeed in this crazy, turbulent 21st century where jobs are going to become obsolete, everyone needs to have an entrepreneurial mindset and skills. It doesn't matter what you're going to do. You could be a stand-up comedian, but if you're going to survive and succeed, you need to be, have this entrepreneurial mindset. And so for about 4 years now, my co-founder, who runs his own organization called Udyam, has been running a spectacular program across 1,000 Delhi government schools. Now, those of you, I noticed quite a few are from India, and you'll sort of totally get this. Even the poor people in our country don't send their kids to government schools. You have to be really badly off to send your kids to a government school. So we work with young people from most disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds. And for 3 years now, we've been running the largest entrepreneurship program in the world. So in Delhi alone, about 750,000 kids, grades 9 to 12, wake up every morning like this morning, and their first compulsory or mandatory subject is entrepreneurship. And they learn it not by sitting in a classroom and learning concepts of funding and minimum viable prototype. No. They learn experientially. They learn tenacity, problem solving, working in teams, etc., through experiential methods. And it's been a great success. And now we're taking this to a number of other states, 4 more states. I also, in one of my capacities, serve as UNICEF's special representative for young people, responsible for a global mission called GENU, Generation Unlimited. We're trying to take this curriculum and other similar curriculum to many other countries this year. And the goal is, look, by 2030, we want every young person in every school, college, vocational institute to be exposed. And this is going pretty well. Now, what happens beyond that's even interesting. So Delhi government is very, very progressive on these matters. And so what they do, what they've done, and they've provided the funding, and we run it for them, is this program called Business Blasters. It's essentially like a Shark Tank. So we look at these young people who've come out of that previous program, and we provide them seed funding, tiny amounts of seed funding. Look, $25. And what they have to do is build the business and launch it. And it's, again, remarkable to see the number of teams which participate, the quality of the ideas, and this is a template for how we want to extend our work. Another important piece of work is around aspirations. The reality is, barring a few cities like Delhi or Bangalore or Mumbai, young people in most parts of India, their aspiration is a government job. And we've got some numbers out here, right? So 25 million people applying for less than 100,000 government jobs. It remains by far and away the preferred choice because it is safe and there's very little accountability. And then, if your ethics are not quite perfect, there's lots of side gigs out there. So we want to shift this over the decade to where entrepreneurship becomes one of the top 2 choices for most young people. And how do you do that? Well, one of the things we're experimenting with is very, very large scale campaigns, particularly on social media, on TikTok, on Facebook, Instagram, all the places that young people hang out. And we showcase stories of local entrepreneurs. See, there's no point talking about somebody from a big city, or let alone some Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk. You need relevant role models of success, people just like you. And we've just finished last week a campaign called 1,000 Stories. It's about 1,000 entrepreneurs across the length and breadth of the country. And we've had more than 10 million views. And here's some of the statistics which I got just this morning. So the viewers were from 28 of 33 states. 45% of the viewers were women. We profiled businesses across 26 sectors, ranging from traditional ones like agriculture and manufacturing to electric vehicles and so on and so forth. And one story about this young entrepreneur who runs a taxi service in Bihar got 5 million views. And then we go back, of course, and say, look, how has the aspirations changed? Is this campaign effective? And it's looking very, very promising. So the question is, how do you sustain this over the years and scale it up? So this is an example of one piece of work. Okay, I talked about ease of doing business, and that turns out to be a big, 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 big deal, as you can imagine. Now, for a lot of years, India had a deservedly horrendous reputation for being a difficult place to do business. We were about 142 in that famous, or now infamous, World Bank ranking. And the Prime Minister said, look, this is not good. We need to improve. And so what we did is figured out how to do the test, take the test better. And so on the face of it, we are like number 75. But on the ground in every state, no matter which government is in power, it remains just fiendishly difficult to start and run a business with. And here's some of the data. There's a thicket of regulations and rules across all sectors. We found 58,000 different compliances. And if you see, to start a business or run a business, a small factory needs to jump through all these hoops: 23 registrations, 750 annual compliances, and so on and so forth. And a very large number of these compliances are legacy issues from before India's independence. And they carry penal consequences. They're criminal. So I love this one, which is in the state of Punjab. There's a rule which says if you don't whitewash with lime your toilet walls every 4 months, you can go to jail. Now, of course, nobody goes to jail for this. But what it does mean is some inspector shows up every 4 months and you've got to, feed him. So this is the kind of stuff you don't need if you're desperately struggling to build your little business. So what we've done is worked with one progressive state, large state called Punjab. And we spent about a year following a 4-step process, which is called simplify, digitize, and then decriminalize. And what we've been able to do is a very substantial shift in the compliance requirements. I won't read the slide, you can see that. For instance, one of the challenges that small businesses or all businesses found was it's difficult to hire women. And that's because, particularly for the night shifts. So we got rid of the regulations that are constraining that. And the women wanted it. It's not just that it is for the employer. And so on and so forth. You can see the number of NOCs required coming down substantially. And so we've developed this playbook, methodology, or approach with the help of 2 partners, Trias and PwC. And now we're getting requests from other states which want to see if we can help them along this journey. Okay, here's another big problem. This is probably true in many, many developing countries: delayed payments. Basically, big guys don't pay the small guys on time. Your standard terms, commercial terms, are about 45 days. So if you deliver a good or a service, you need to be paid within 45 days. And in no instance is it really 45 days. It's very often 90, and it can go up to 6 months, in extreme cases, a year. And you look at what are the reasons for this. Sure, there are sometimes legitimate reasons, like the product quality is an issue or something. But most of the time, it is just abuse of power by large buyers who can get away with it. And half of it is by government buyers, so government procurement. And the sad thing is, everybody has accepted that this is the way it's going to be. And so you're a small business, you can't even borrow from the formal system. So you have to pay some incredible high interest rate to borrow money. And then your money is tied up in working capital because you can't get paid on time. So we decided to focus on this. And with the help of some partners like Dun & Bradstreet and even the government itself, what we've done is shone the spotlight on this, how big an issue it is and how morally wrong it is, its economic consequences. So we're putting out a major report along with the Chief Economic Advisor of India, with the government. And many of the big CEOs have now taken a video pledge to pay on time. We're trying to see if we can get all government procurement in the next couple of years online through these kinds of supply chain payment platforms, one of which is called Threads. We're trying to see if we can. India has been really successful during COVID to see it to get many types of commercial disputes resolved through arbitration and working online. So this is called ODR, and we're trying to see if we can get more online dispute resolution on these types of delayed payments issues. So a tremendous amount of work with a very early but enormous potential. I am beginning to recognize I'm going too far. And then we've got other work in the area of women entrepreneurship, access to finance, tough issues. Look, let me pause here. So at the end of 3 years, where are we? I think we're still very early. I wouldn't say that we have achieved any breakthroughs, but I think we understand the landscape very well. We understand, the partners and the solutions which are promising. We understand which interventions are high leverage, which ones are probably important but not so critical. And I think we've got green shoots in every area. But what I realized a few months ago is there's just no way in hell that we are going to be able to scale our work to the kind of impact we need to have. For instance, our work in schools, it's taking a year to sign up 2 states, and India has 30 plus states. So it'll take us 15 years at this run rate. So we need to think about something very different that will allow us to scale the impact much faster. And right now, my big insight, and an insight that is shared by a lot of our alliance partners, is, look, let's make this not just our problem, but Mr. Modi's problem. Mr. Modi is our very energetic prime minister. How do we make this his problem? Okay, when you look at India's development, from time to time, we've had a great leap forward, so to speak. And very often these leaps happen because the government took on some issue in a mission mode. And so, for instance, if you look at India's progress on solar, moving to renewables, solar power, it's been quite spectacular. Our work to end public defecation through a toilets program called Swachh Bharat has been reasonable, and so on and so forth. So the question is it time, and do we think we can create a national entrepreneurship mission, which brings together all of society, government, private sector, social sector, and academia around this mission? And that's what we're working really hard right now. We're hoping that by the end of the year, we'll be able to persuade all the powers that be that it is time for such a mission. The mission objective is 10 million new entrepreneurs, 100 million new jobs by 2030. And the way we see this working is basically not inventing anything new, but taking what already is there, what already works, and making it more effective. So for instance, if we've got good interventions for schools and colleges, let's just take it to every state really fast. And that's really a policy switch more than anything else. What we have is enormous physical infrastructure for incubation and acceleration in every district of the country. India has about 750 districts. And so, but most of these are run down, ineffective. We know how to breathe life into it. So with some reasonable resources and state government support, we're actually in a position to revitalize this infrastructure really well. Similarly, access to credit is very largely a policy issue. There's lots of capital sloshing around in aggregate, but it's not flowing to MSMEs. And it's because of the Reserve Bank's policies around lending to NBFCs and so on and so forth. There's some very precise interventions which are required. And sure, we can peck away at it, but it's going to take a long time. So we think the National Entrepreneurship Mission should be able to make these shifts much faster. So that's where we are right now. I remain hopeful, optimistic. I'm now going to pause, turn off screen sharing, and see if this has interested any of you and whether we have questions, comments, and so forth.
Thank you so much, Ravi. That was fantastic. If you were in the room with me, I would have given you a standing ovation. And I'm so many of us are really, really inspired by what you've just shared. In particular, Ravi, you know, when I started this visiting scholarship, my focus was on how SMEs can shape policy. And what you've just described is through mass entrepreneurship gives me so much hope because the issues that you've outlined in India are the same issues in Nigeria, are the same issues across Africa and in many, many emerging economies. SMEs are truly fighting for survival in sometimes hostile environments. And SME, yes, not always, but many. And in some contexts, like our context, I'm an SME myself through many companies. Oftentimes we struggle to find the support. And so the power in numbers, which you've just outlined, and having champions and advocates such as yourself is truly inspirational. And I am really excited about this work. So thank you, thank you, thank you.